Hey, Adobe Live family, welcome back to another graphic design spotlight. I couldn't be more excited to announce today's guest because she is a very talented, pony-loving pink princess, Miss Kristy Campbell. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kristy. I honestly want to say I was a little bit like fangirling before our stream today because I've been following you for forever.
Oh, hello, guys. Hello, Brittany. I'm super excited about this today. I just love chatting with like-minded people, and Brittany loves pink just as much as I do. So it was a great duo we have.
For sure. And I was saying all day today, this is going to be like a live stream that truly is the definition of so fetch. So as we get ready to jump in today, Kristy, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your story as you kind of got started in brand identity and graphic design, and now the founder of Pink Pony Creative.
Yeah, so I just honestly, it feels a bit surreal, the things that I've done in a way where I just never thought that this would be possible for me in my career. So I, did the classic, went to university, I studied graphic design and animation, and I graduated in 2014. And then I worked for about 7 years in the industry, just working for various employers. I went traveling, did the traveling thing for a while. So I had three different jobs between leaving university and owning Pink Pony Creative. And the previous job I was at, it was one, the people were fantastic. I was there for 2 years, but I was working for a one brand business, designing in the same colors, the same fonts for 2 years. Honestly, I probably knew five fonts 4 or 5 years ago. That's all I knew, which sounds crazy now because now my list of library fonts is massive. But I was at this business, and although they were a great company to work for, I was getting really creatively bored and sort of I needed that challenge. So I said, why not do something about this and like learn new skills and just refresh that creativity. So I decided to set up a 100-day design challenge, and I used Instagram to keep myself accountable. And it's funny, when I started the page, I really didn't think it would grow into a business. I purely made it for a cool portfolio of work of this 100-day design challenge. And I called it Pink Pony Creative. It wasn't a serious decision. I just felt like this was a cool name. I loved pink and I loved ponies when I was little, so that's where it comes from. Everyone always asks me. And yeah, then the design challenge just started going really well. I started to get a little bit of traction, and I had my first inquiry maybe at around day 80, and someone just asked me, "Hey, look, can you design me a logo?" And I was like, okay, I actually think this could be something instead of just a little design challenge. And then at the end of the 100 days design challenge, I was like, I'm going to make this a business. So I registered the company name. I then actually approached my employer at the time and I said, look, I really want to start my own business. How would you feel? Which is, thinking about now, pretty bold of me to do. How would you feel about me dropping down one day of the week and work on my business that day, and I'll just work for you 4 days? And they were incredible. I'm so lucky for what they gave me. They allowed me to do that, and then allow me to drop to 3 days, 4 days, one day, 2 hours a week, 1 hour a month. And I just had this beautiful progression into my business, which I'm so thankful for. So yeah, then that's when Pink Pony was born. That was in 2020. And then here we are today. I'm actually in my office that we have, which is awesome. I've got a team. They're not here right now. And yeah, we work with clients all over the world. I've spoken at Adobe MAX twice. I'm speaking there again this year. Just some awesome things, and like looking at where I've come from, and honestly, 5 years ago, I would never ever thought this was possible. I was feeling like, is this what my career is going to be? Just me working for someone else for the same company who works in the same three colors. But no, yeah, yeah, it's a blessing, and I've loved every second of it. And I have a giant pink horse in my office. Like, how cool.
I love that so much. And I think that your story is so inspirational to so many people, especially in the design space. Because I think a lot of designers, they end up going to school or they're self-taught and they think like security is what I need. So they find the job, they do the things, but they feel really stuck and creatively drained because nothing is really sparking like that joy in what they're creating. So I think that this is like a loaded story. But number one, I think what you said is so inspiring to other designers. I think another thing is that you just really gave us an important life lesson, which is nothing happens the first time you post something. It took you 80 days of this design challenge to really figure out or find your first client this way. So, with that being said, now you have your agency and you have a team with you. When did you decide, or when did you know it was time to bring a team into the play here?
Yes, I get asked this a lot because it's such a big, taking that first step and hiring someone is so scary. And it's one that you kind of don't make a plan to do really. Like I never set out, even after having my challenge, I didn't think I would have a team. I just didn't see that in my future. But then I just got to the point with posting so much on Instagram that I was getting really busy. And I was like, I literally can't cope with the amount of work we have. So I decided to, again, take a really gradual sort of ease into hiring someone. I decided to employ someone just contracting. When they did work for about 5 hours a week. I think I found someone through Instagram. I'd like reached out and sort of said like, hey, does anyone out there want to do some contracting work for me? And I had a couple of girls who did a few hours a week, and then that progressively built up. And I decided at one point they were probably doing, around 10 hours a week. And I sort of said to myself, like, I think this is where I can make a decision. Should I hire someone full time? And yeah, that was a really scary decision. I remember that feeling like, wow, this feels, I'm a real grown up, like I'm making big decisions here. And so I decided to take them on gradually. Again, my dad has been a really big mentor in my whole journey. He's very good at business, and my husband actually, they're both very good at business. So I feel very blessed. I don't actually have a mentor specifically, I have them. And my dad said to me, remember, most things in business, Kristy, are fluid and negotiable. You don't have to go out there and say, I'm going to hire someone 40 hours a week full time. So I decided to go out there and say, look, would like to hire someone 30 hours with the hope in a few weeks it'll turn into a full-time role. I thought that might take a few months, but it was the second week of my first employee's job, and she was doing full-time hours. So I realized straight away that I had the capacity to do so. And that was back in 2021. And then now I've got 4 full-time designers and also an accounts manager who works part-time, who happens to be my sister as well, which is awesome to have her on the team too.
That's amazing. And I think another thing, again, like hiring, it's so scary. And when you're a designer and you have a very specific vision for things, what does that look like for you? Like, is it hard to
Mm.
hand off projects and still feel like, wait a second, like I want to have that creative vision or that role still, while still allowing your team to thrive in their zone of genius too?
Yes, this is a really big thing for designers, to basically let go of the idea that you're the only one that can do all the work. Because essentially, yes, we have a specific style. I call it your artistic DNA. We all have our own type of artistic DNA. Especially with my type of work, I do have quite a specific style. So trying to find people who have that style was quite difficult. But in a way, I just looked for certain things, like if someone can illustrate, if someone can pull together a color palette, like a really bold color palette well, if someone can pull together just quite a beautiful logo as well, obviously that's takes into consideration. So seeing those little aspects and just making a note of them, finding that person who, yes, they have good skills, but if they've got a really high drive and they're passionate for design, passionate for life, even little things, if there's someone who enjoys going to the gym, and those things all count because they make up a really hardworking person. So I keep a lookout for that type of person. And when you find them, you can teach them your artistic DNA. But then on top of that, if you imagine your artistic DNA and theirs, and if you join them together, like you're going to create something quite beautiful. So you have to let go of doing certain things or thinking certain ways, because we all create differently. Every project would be created quite differently depending on the designer, but if you can just approach it from the way they're creating it like this, you have to just let them have creative control and let them dive into it. Obviously you come into it and help them out and things, and they definitely have progressed so much, my team, and they do have a very similar style to me now, but it's taken a long sort of a journey to get there. And they're just amazing. They do some incredible work, and I'm so blessed. Like honestly, most of the work that you guys see on the Pink Pony agency Instagram is mostly them, because I just don't have the time to put in to the design work itself anymore. So I sort of guide them and give them feedback and teach them things, but a lot of it is them, and they're incredible. So I feel very lucky, and oh, they're awesome. Hopefully they're watching this.
You can just tell that you adore them so much. And I know that they adore you just as much, Kristy. And I feel like now artistic DNA is going to be something I use just in everyday life because I love that term. And like, cheers to creating beautiful, like, brand babies together because that's a vibe.
Yes, I love that.
I love it. And this kind of brings us into, how you and your team actually leverage Adobe Creative Cloud tools when developing brand identities for clients and how it's helped enhance your creative process. So I'll go
Oh
ahead
my
and give
gosh.
the mic over to you and let you share your screen.
Yeah. So, in terms of our full creative process, like when it comes to Adobe, I mean, where would any of us be without Adobe? I have to say, we all
Amen.
use it. Yeah, amen to that. We all use it in such different ways. I'm going to show a project that I actually did work on myself. I think I worked on this almost probably 2 years ago now. And our process has definitely developed, but a lot of the work that we obviously are creating now, I can't show yet. So it's a little bit hard to know what to put out there to the world. But essentially, what we all do work very similar. I teach the girls what I call the pink pony process. Love the alliteration there. And basically, we have a discovery call, then we jump on and create the creative direction. I'll show you what this looks like. So essentially, yeah, like I said, this is 2 years ago. This looks a bit different now. We do actually work through like a whole brief and a bit of a strategy behind the businesses now. But essentially, when it comes to creative direction, you present 3 mood boards. So, mood board A, mood board B, and then mood board C. And we all work this way for most of our projects. And then we get the clients, feedback. Which mood board do you feel resonates with you the most? In this case, they loved the last mood board. For this client, it was a ice cream truck, and they were a family-owned business, so it had been passed down through the family. So I wanted this like vintage feel because it had been passed down, and that feeling of like nostalgia. And I really wanted to push that through in the cool illustration work, even like the checkered flooring there, and the beautiful type as well. So yeah, this client loved the mood board. We went ahead and we started to develop it. Essentially, bringing together just the ideas that they loved. They pretty much wholeheartedly loved this, but also really enjoyed the illustrations here too, which is somewhat similar to what you can see here. But typically what we do from there is we just start to pull together the brand identity. So again, the team and I work in a very similar way now. We do have slightly different techniques when it comes to certain things, but I say to the girls as soon as they come into the business, like, I want you to understand that I don't think there's no right or wrong for doing things, because I think I remember the feeling when I was sitting down in my office, people were watching me design as a junior designer, and they would literally judge me for the way I was doing something. And I felt
Right.
really like judged, like I wasn't doing it correctly. So I want the girls to feel like whatever they're creating, we can work on it together. There could be like obviously tips and tricks to help them create faster and maybe better, but essentially there's so many ways we can do things. So whatever works for you, whatever you find works for you. But yeah, essentially for this type of business, what we would typically do is we pull together lots of typography options. I knew quite quickly the style of logo that I wanted for this design. And so I found the typography pretty quick. And I mean, like, as you get more experience, this would be something that happens a lot. You do speed up the process. But then from there, it was all about like creating a more unique look. I loved the typography here. It had that really vintage feel. So then it's working with that, and how do we then create that into something more unique? And you can see I started developing some unusual ideas here, but I was not a fan. And then we just continued working through just multiple variations of type. You can see even coming in here with some more unique kind of splashes, like that feeling of ice cream. I loved the way that the type kind of actually looked like thick ice cream as well. It had that real sort of voluptuous feel to it, which was
Right.
quite beautiful. One thing we actually struggled with this logo was the S. So the client loved the logo, but we did have a lot of changes that we moved through, which I'll show you in a minute, to do with the S, because we felt like the S also looked like a J. So this was a really interesting thing to try and perfect, because obviously the word Swallies actually came from a last name, and I loved the name for an ice cream truck. I thought it just sounded awesome. It was really unique, but it's, yeah, obviously it's not a common word, so how do we make that more prominent? And you can start to see I did so much development onto the S, and even with the Y, I quite liked how it almost looked very like Slurpee, I'll call it. And you can see some more developments here. You know, how do we then integrate that into the W, and how do we really make it look like an S, and absolutely nail that. So you can see quite a few bits of developments here when it comes to the S, and sort of absolutely trying to nail that. It was a difficult thing to do, to be honest, because most S's that I was looking at actually, and especially when it came to script and this sort of style of the handwritten vintage type, looked like, a lot of them look like J's when you put it down to it.
Right.
So it was really, how do I make it start to look like an S? And you can start to, oh, I didn't realize I had this selected. Let's go this way. You can start to sort of see some of the developments I started to make. I sort of took a base letter, and then I actually drew over it just with the pen tool, and I started to be able to map out like exactly where that could go, and see if we can create like a really beautiful look with the S there, smooth that out, and how do we really perfect that? And then I sort of got to a point where I sort of started to feel like the S was kind of developing quite beautifully. So we then pitched that to the client as well, showed them lots of these variations. There's so many, I can't even remember how many I did.
I was
And
gonna
we
say, like, if you had to guess, how long do you think it took you to do all these S's?
It took a while, because again, it just kept coming down to the fact, like, does this look like an S or does this look like a J?
And then you're
And it
questioning
was
yourself.
definitely, yeah. And, you know, often we have, as the designer who knows the name of the business, like, in a weird way, it's hard for me to see the J, because I know it's a S, but I can understand that it would look like a J to, depending on the audience. So it was really trying to make that perfect. I actually really liked this concept with the kind of the longer Y as well, because it just really shaped the whole logo there, especially with the two sort of droplets, kind of giving that feeling of ice cream, and like almost like a delicious ice cream. But then we did come down to it where the client actually selected a slightly different variation. So they actually came down, and we ended up selecting, oh my gosh, do I have the logo, the final one? I'm like, do I have the final one on there? I think this was the final one that we ended up going with. You know what? I don't even know if the final one is on this board. I pulled everything together anyway on this board, so this is why it's so neat, because it did not quite look this neat when I pulled it together. But
It's
yeah,
so
the
cool to see
development of
your
the S was good.
process too. Like your whole
Yeah,
process is here. And that's so cool to follow. And I think for us to peek into as well.
definitely. Yeah, so it was really trying to nail that logo. But something that I also do, and I think this is a really good tip for visual identity designers, is once you do start to pull together a logo that you're feeling like, oh, this is quite a cool design, or this is feeling really like quite correct for the brand, you should actually start to pull everything together quite quickly, in the way of like the typography, the color palette. How does everything actually work together? Because you could have a color palette and a logo and a typography, but they might look great on their own, but do they work visually together? So how can you start to perfect that and make it look more aligned? So you can sort of start to map out a few sort of made up variations of like, what would the social media post look like? How would that come together? Very sort of, this was sort of very basic. I started to really develop it. I think you see sort of I designed somewhat of a carousel here. So you can kind of see that development here coming through. That was the final logo that we went with. And then sort of how does everything come together? You can start to see the social media. But I would recommend, for visual identity designers, to really pull everything together quite quickly. Even if you're not fine on the logo yet, start to pull that together to really understand what everything looks like. Because essentially, with visual identity, we're trying to create a visual feeling for design and all of the assets themselves. So I love this type too. This is an awesome font. For all those playing at home, I'm sure I'll get asked. I can't even, is it treacle? Fat? I'm like, how do you say that word? It's a great font.
Trillic, maybe?
Trellic? I think you could be
It's
correct there.
beautiful either way. It's beautiful. And I feel like the way that they come together too is so, like, it just feels so natural. And I think that's something that a lot of designers can get stuck on too is like when, you have this font that you love, but how do you find one that feels like it fits like a perfect puzzle
Mm.
piece with the one that you really want to utilize, right? So, do you have any tips for us there, Kristy?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, essentially, what we start to develop again, I think I found this type pretty quickly. But what I would do, I would just map out a basic subheading, heading, body copy, which essentially is not quite correct here. Let's give it a little whirl. We'll just go subheading here. Really just map out a basic structure, and then you can begin to sort of dive into like what really works. So obviously this combination of typography wouldn't work for your heading, subheading, body, because we're too heavy everywhere. It's too bold. We would definitely need to incorporate something different for the body copy. So you could come in and try something a little bit different. I'd be very much feeling something a little bit more lighter as well, just to give it a really nice balance there. And you can just start to map out what that would look like, what looks really cohesive. So something else I love to do, which I used to call highlight type, this little guy down here. But after Made by James, he called it, oh my gosh, I'm going to get the name wrong. Oh my gosh, what is it called? Detailed? Oh my gosh, can't remember.
Decorative?
It's something like that. It starts with a D and I cannot remember. I'm not very good at remembering things at the moment. I'll call it highlight type, but here's a great word for it. But it's a really nice way to add personality into your brand without overdoing it, because essentially you wouldn't see this highlight type everywhere. It would come across in like little instances of maybe a personal sort of little annotation, or maybe it's sort of signing off something. It's a really nice way just to bring that together. But you can start to create variations of your typography. Maybe we decide that we want a slightly different subheading. Might even be better doing a subheading similar to your body copy. Yes, that's already looking a little bit more balanced. It doesn't just feel so heavy on the eyes. So your eye really pulls into that heading copy, subheading, and then body as well. And you can just start to pull together various sort of styles of that, and what works well and what doesn't. Something like that could be quite beautiful too. But yeah, types a real interesting one, because you can actually have so much personality in typography, but it's just obviously careful to not overdo it in your typography too. You just want to make sure it's quite a fun, it's giving Skims.
It was. That's the first
type.
thing I thought of. I'm like, that is like Skims font right there.
It sure is. Yeah, it looks very Skims. But yeah, just pulling it together like this can just help visualize what would be the best option. But again, from there, I would still recommend going through, setting up, a bit of a visual system. How does this then work together with the actual branding? What looks really good? Yeah.
That was such a good tip. And I feel like, again, it just comes down to trial and error and finding what works and what doesn't, right? I think there's no right or wrong way, right? And that's what you've said this whole time.
Definitely. Something we also do at Pink Pony, which it became just something I started to call this little system, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. I call this the 9 grid. And so where it comes from is, if you think about an Instagram grid, obviously when you look at Instagram, it's like a set of 9 posts. It's a really nice way to actually bring together that visual. So let's just start to create something. So what I've sort of taught the girls, and also what I do, is I pull together this 9 grid, which essentially allows us to see everything working together in a bit of a layout sense as well. Like, how does everything fit together? how does it look? And yeah, it's just a really nice way to, once you begin to set up this grid, then trial things. So like, let's trial a different color palette, let's trial different typography, and see how that all fits together and works together. So highly recommend doing what I call the 9 grid. It's worked really nicely for us as a business. So yeah, again, it's just a great way to see everything working together visually. How does everything fit? Let's just have a bit of fun. Let's sort of move that around. But yeah, again, it's all about testing it, making sure it's got that particular look. Let's just sort of lay out a bit of a system here. And then this is where you can really test, once you've got all of this layout, then let's duplicate it, maybe try a different color palette. Let's duplicate it again, maybe try some different typography options, or maybe we're going to try this other variation of the logo that works really nicely. So it's just all about that trial and error, really.
I love this tip. And I think like it's very clear, like you are the Illustrator queen. I want to say, like you moved through Illustrator, like you made this program. So
Oh,
I
thank
love
you. I
that.
appreciate that. You know who's an Illustrator king is James Barnard. He's the king of shortcuts. Shout out to James. His shortcut knowledge, I'm like, I don't know how you do that, brother. That is great. Give me some of
I
those
love it.
tips.
It's so true. And I love when you can learn from other creatives too, right? It's so important. And with that being said, I'd love to ask you, like, what are 3 underrated tips or hacks that you think everybody needs to know about in Illustrator?
Oh, okay.
It's a hard
One,
one, I know.
which
Sorry.
no. I've spoken about this before on a live, but I use this so much, and it's just making any vectors into guides. So, we've got a bit of a layout system that we need to create, and we want to, create some guides. I'm just going to quickly do this. I know this isn't quite set right, but say we've got a shape and we want a bit of a margin. All you do is Command 5, and you've got your guide. So you can really make some awesome guides, especially if you're laying out things like templates, and just making sure everything's perfect. Anything can turn into guides too. Like, look at that.
That is
That's
so
a
cool.
crazy guide. So that's a really good tip. Oh, another good tip that I love for Illustrator. One that I've just started using a lot of is actually essentially, let's come over here. If we create an awesome shape, whatever that might be, instead of smoothing it out using the smooth tool, if you want to know those shortcuts, you just go, oh my gosh, I don't even know the shortcut off like saying it out loud. I've never said it out loud. Make sure you've got the brush tool selected, and then you click B, and it should give you the shortcut for the smooth tool. But instead of using that tool for smoothing, I've actually started just to use, which people will probably be like, how did you not know that? But hey, we all learn things very slowly sometimes.
At our own pace.
Exactly. And there's so much to learn. It's interesting, again, don't be afraid to speak up and say that you don't know something, because we all don't know so much about these programs still. Like, there's so much to learn. So just coming down from object path smooth, I love this little tool. I'm just smoothing it out, like using this slider. It's just a really nice way and an easy way to smooth things out, which I love. I love the little tips that help a lot. Also, the appearance panel. God, I could go on forever about the tips. I think we all could, couldn't we? The appearance panel is something that is incredible if you haven't started to learn it. So let's take this typography. Coming over to the appearance panel, add a new fill. Let's bring the fill on the top. Let's add a beautiful color here, and let's add a stroke. So instead of, yeah, there we go, looking good. You can then also add another stroke. And then on the stroke, you can then add things like transform. Let's come down here. This could be too small. It might be, sometimes if you, that's not too bad. We can start to add these effects like you would with the blend mode, and instead of outlining the text, adding that blend mode, and then having text that you can't edit, having the appearance panel is incredible because once you've got your appearance, whatever that might look like, oh, didn't mean to do 50. Holy, I actually quite like the 10. Let's go here. You've got that editable text. Hey there. So you can create whatever you want to create. But if it was something like let's go the blend mode. Oh, which again, this was something I would have done a few years ago. If we wanted to get that sort of 3D look, instead of using the appearance panels, let's get this 3D look that we want to achieve. Oh, I didn't put a stroke on them. La la la. There we go. We have the same effect, but we don't have the editable text. So because we've outlined it, you can't actually go in and change the text. But in doing the same process a similar way through the appearance panel, you also then have the ability to actually change the font, which is awesome. And then you can adjust it from there. So that's a really cool tip. It's a great one. You can do the same thing with shapes, which is great. And then you can, where is oh my gosh. I always change my board on Illustrator is never set in stone, which people will probably be like, how do you work? Here we go, the graphic styles. You just drop that bad boy in there and then you have that as a graphic style. Boom.
That is so cool.
Yeah, we'll just need to add a few more copies in there to make it perfect. But that's another good tip for those playing at home. Love that one. It's a really fun one, and then you can easily create type or vector shapes using that same appearance, which is awesome.
I feel like it's so cool how things are like we're always learning, and this one thing probably just changed your game right now, I think.
Yes, definitely. I did a video on this maybe a few weeks ago, and people loved it. They were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I've never thought of using it that way. Again, it's just all about those tips that, sharing what you know and understanding that although you could be an expert, there's still things that you might not know. This is great. Okay, so my junior designer, I didn't know this until recently, putting myself out there, told me you can change the points or the millimeters or the centimeters simply by right-clicking on your ruler here and changing it to pixels or millimeters. I did not know that about 2 months ago. So shout out to Hannah, my junior designer. She taught me this. So there you go. We're all learning, and don't be afraid to put your hand up and say that you don't know something. Again, there's so much to learn with these programs. It's wild.
I think that's the thing too, is that I want to say never think that you know it all. Because the second that you think you know it all, you're going to stop learning, and you never know when something like so simple, like again, that right click and finding your ruler, changing the dimensions is going to change your life, right?
Yes, definitely. Like the other one that she's taught me a few actually, which is just great. I wonder if it's going to work in this way. You can actually use, I'm just going to move this for me. Let's go up to here. So we've got a size of an artboard. If we wanted to halve that, I didn't know, again, that my junior designer taught me this. You can use it like a calculator. I just went, that number divided by 2 and it mic drop. Again, I didn't know this. So shout out to my junior designer who's teaching me things.
That is so awesome.
We're all learning. So it's great to be able to bounce off each other, and yeah. That's cool.
And just be a sponge. That's all you can do, right? Is be a sponge.
Yes, be the sponge. We're here for the sponge.
I love that. With this being said, I know we've left a lot in. It's Swoolies, is that right? Swoolies?
Swallies, yeah.
Swallies. We've looked a lot at Swallies. I'd love to kind of ask you, Kristy, what has been your favorite brand project, and why does it hold such a special place in your heart? If you want to share that with us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know it's like asking you to choose your favorite baby. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It is so tough. I think this was actually one of my favorite projects because, there's so many, but this would be definitely up there just because it was something that I like, creating an ice cream truck, branding. Like you can just go so playful and fun. And the style that I love is everything, this this brand holds. So it was really easy for me to pull this together. It felt very natural. And I just loved creating it. I loved the color palette, loved the vintage typography, like of the logo, and just making it like a bit modern. So I really loved this project. There's definitely quite a few, that I could think of. I'm working on one right now that I'm so proud to have as a client. I don't want to say too much yet, but it's just something that I never would have ever thought I'd be able to be a part of. But I think in general, it's those clients, it's not necessarily a project. You could be designing the strangest thing, but it's the clients who allow you to have creative freedom and that trust you. Even if they say, oh, look, can we try this? And you try it for them, and you sort of give them your professional expertise. Like, hey, look, I've created this for you, this variation, but I do feel like the initial one was the one that we should go with for these various reasons. And if they're like, yep, totally agree with you. Those are the clients that we love, just because they allow creative control for you. But then again, I do think those challenging clients, in a funny way, are so good for us. We need them. We need those challenges, because how else are we going to learn? Imagine if we just had dream clients here, there, and
All
everywhere
the
who just
time.
let us do whatever we wanted. We're never going to learn how to deal with more difficult clients, how to deal with design work that we struggle to do, because essentially, yeah, that's where we grow the most. So
I love that. I think that's that you really couldn't have answered any better. And I think that it's so cool because you're right. I think it's the experience that really is what allows a project to be like considered a favorite, right? Which is so cool. I think so special, and they'll all hold special places in your hearts. Something that I want to dive into with you, Kristy, is you have spent, I feel like, a lot of time building your personal brand outside of Pink Pony. And I really want to kind of ask you and walk into that a little bit of what you think the importance of having a personal brand is when you're developing yourself as a designer.
yes. Oh, I love this question for two
It's a
reasons.
juicy one.
It's a juicy one. So I'm just genuinely passionate about this because I truly believe in it. But the other reason I'm going to be talking about this at Adobe MAX coming up this year in Miami. And I've also just previously done a sort of session on this earlier in the year in another Creative South in America. And so I'm very passionate about this. And I feel like I've like learned exactly why I think personal branding is like so important. Multiple reasons. So, I mean, like essentially, when I started my Instagram page, or even just prior to that, I always thought the peak of my career would be around how good I am as a designer. And I thought this in university too. I wasn't the best designer in the class. I was probably getting like mid-range grades. I wasn't the best. I was very just the same as, pretty average. I was okay. I wasn't bad, but I thought the peak of my career would be that I have to be the best designer I can be. I've got to be that like best in the world designer to be doing well. But I actually don't believe that's true. I think you could be the best designer in the world, but if you can't present yourself well to the world, if you can't have good conversations with people, if you can't manage your time, if you can't just simply be quite an open, welcoming person, you're going to find that really difficult to get to the top because you have to put yourself out there. I do think part of the reason why Pink Pony has, developed the way it has is because I've put everything I am into this business and into my own brand, and people can see that. I would describe myself as quite like a bubbly, outgoing person who doesn't really take life too seriously. And that is everything Pink Pony is for sure. Bubbly, outgoing, don't take life too seriously. But, when I want to do things, I do things well. I always put 110% of my effort into it. And that's what Pink Pony is as well. So if you can do that within your business and your brand, people will just, I'm going to use the word authentic, which I do not like using because this word could mean so many different things to so many people. And how do you even be authentic? You have to look within yourself and find who you truly are. And I think one of the things, the reason why Pink Pony's done the way, has developed the way it has is because I've looked into my childhood, which sounds really simple, but I think a lot of us have a lot of happiness, and like I am lucky enough to have a lot of happiness in my childhood. And if we can look into that and really like put that out there to the world, it'll shine in a really beautiful way, because when you're a child, you couldn't be more authentic to who you are. You don't put on a front, or you're not trying to impress people. So yeah, I mean, like, again, there's so many things in terms of personal branding I could talk on. One of the other things, I'll just keep this really sweet and short, is taking your personal brand further, and even your brand that you have outside of just what you see like on a wall or what you see digitally. I've taken my brand into what I wear now. So I wear my brand everywhere I go. If we are doing something in terms of business, if I'm attending an event, whatever it might be, I wear pink, and it's for a reason. I do it strategically, so people start to recognize me and just even pink as being Pink Pony, and it's worked out really well. Like even at Adobe MAX last year, I had people run up to me from the other side of the conference because they saw my pink jacket and they were like, "Oh my god, I knew it was you because of your pink." So it has played off really well.
I love that so much. And I think even like following you on Instagram, and I feel like anybody who is not yet following Kristy, like you're doing it wrong. The mods are going to drop her Instagram in the chat. Like if you go, don't go now, but later go take like a good hard peek at her page. And I think it's so cool the way that you show up, and it's so in alignment with your brand. And I think that's what makes it so memorable. It really allows people to feel like they know, like, and trust you. And you're just, like you said, we won't use the word authentically, but you're just yourself. And that's the beautiful part of it. So, with this being said, you have this Instagram page. You've spent so much time developing it. What are your biggest tips for filming and creating content around your work as a designer?
Oh, good question. So I mean, at the moment, I feel like I struggle with social media at the moment. Like, I'm not going to lie and say that it comes really naturally to me right now, because I I mean, we're all busy. I shouldn't use this as an excuse, but like I do feel very pulled in a lot of directions. So it's hard to be able to spend the time into social media. And I honestly don't think my videos are essentially like the best things in the world right now. If you're looking for inspo for social media, I would go to someone like CJ Crawley. He's a friend of mine now. He is incredible the way he presents himself on Instagram, and even Jack Chitty. I think his Instagram handle might be Chitty something. But again, both of them really shine in terms of the way they present on social media, because they tell a story through their videos. I'm really referencing someone else here, and I've definitely, CJ's given me some tips, and in terms of like even how to create better videos, because I was really kind of struggling for a bit. And it's all about telling a story through your videos if you can. And obviously, the other thing with social media, which I know no one likes to hear, is consistency, because consistency equals hard work. It's scary. We're like, oh, I don't want to work that hard. But if you want to grow an audience, you have to be consistent. And I'm not saying that is like post every day. Find something that works for you and then just be consistent. It might be 3 times a week, which is the sweet spot for me. It's about 2 or 3 really at the moment, but that's the sweet spot. And then just do it. You have to do it. Like, it has to be something that's in your marketing strategy. The other thing I found crazy about social media too, we all sit here and complain about it a bit, but we are forgetting that it's a platform that essentially is free, and we're doing free marketing. Like, we're literally getting our dream clients through free marketing. So we should stop complaining about the algorithm and just be so thankful for this. Because, like, imagine 20 years ago, we would have had to print out flyers, drop them out around, the neighborhood. We couldn't even reach those clients internationally 20 years ago. And here we are complaining that we don't get 10,000 views on a video. So I think if you can start tackling it from a way of like, it's just a really good chance to reach people that we haven't reached before, that's just incredible.
That's such a good tip. And I'd love if you want to pull up your Instagram, Kristy, so you can walk us through maybe a few of your posts, and also so that we can see how you've brought this consistency of your brand into socials and the importance of that too.
Cool. No, of course. So, I mean, this is my Instagram. One of
It's
the things that I actually, thank you. One of the things I developed, or sort of decided to do about probably a year ago, was I never had any pinned posts, or I think I had my pinned posts is like my most watched videos. But then I thought about it and I was like, this is a chance, when people land on your page, to introduce yourself. It's a chance to say who you are and what you do. And I think it's just a really nice way to bring this in. Yeah, I think I would have posted this December 2023. That was last year. Introduce yourself. Exactly what do you do and what do you believe in? So having this and just having a bit about my story, I think as soon as someone lands on your page, even if it's a designer or a client or a friend, whoever it might be, they can learn a bit about you. So I'd really recommend doing this in whatever shape that might be. So I have a bit about me, my work, a bit of a overview. What do I actually do and what do I actually believe in? So I've got a small quote here about, what I believe visual identity should be in today's market. It's a really nice way to introduce. And then again, the last one here is my agency. So just talking more about who we are as a business, my team, introducing them, and then the kind of work that they create, because that's something that I always want to highlight too. And I want to always make sure that people know what is created by me and what is created by my team. So this would be the only post on my page that is created by my team. I feel really funny about sharing work that's not mine on this page. So I opened this account, which is our agency account, when I started to grow a team, which essentially is all of the work that we do creatively as a whole and collectively. And, this is all done by my team, which, I didn't want to go out there to the world and simply put it only on my page because I did feel really funny. I felt like I was taking the credit for something that they did. So I wanted to build my personal Instagram page, my personal brand page, and then my agency page. And it's worked out really nicely because on this page too, I can share videos that are a little bit more, casual and a bit more fun. And then I just keep the more serious stuff for the agency page. So it's worked really nicely. I'll tell you a great story just quickly. So this video here did really well. It's about Adobe Firefly. I did it quite quickly. I was like, oh, I need to post something like this. Should be quite a cool video to post. I never thought that posting an Adobe Firefly video, because essentially I'm not designing here, I wouldn't say. Like for me, I'm just showcasing like a cool effect that Adobe Firefly can do. But this video got me like the coolest client I've ever could have dreamed of in the world. They literally said to me on the call, they were like, do you know how we found you? Which is the client that I can't really talk about yet, sadly. And I said to them, no, tell me. And they said, we found you from the video where you created that really cool K with the cool effects. And again, I'm not actually designing, but they found me through this video. So, open your mind and think like clients can find us through so many ways. It's not just client work. It's not just when we talk about design. It could be so many other things. So I think it's a great little tip. For some reason, the Firefly videos are going off at the moment. This one was another one that did really well, just because of the use of, actually this was more Gen Phil, and just creating those mock-ups using generative AI. And again, this is coming down to the personal brand. I'm putting my personality into the videos, having a little bit of fun, not taking it too seriously. I am a part-time actor, apparently. Not that I can act, but, we're putting ourselves out there.
This is so amazing. And I think it's so cool to sneak again, like into your Instagram and see some of the things that you're posting. I also particularly love this video, and you can tell, were you trying something new here?
Yeah, I was. I think, again, I pulled this together really quickly. I have on my phone and now my computer, I've got just a folder of B-roll, which essentially is sort of like, just the cutouts of me. And I felt so silly doing it. It's literally just minutes and minutes of me pulling these random faces to the computer. So essentially when I create most of my videos now, even like sort of these videos, all of this content that you can see wasn't actually made for that video. I have like a big stash of videos of me looking excited and then me looking scared and then me looking like, I don't know, any kind of emotion. I've kind of videoed it now. It's just a really nice way to have that kind of in storage, and then you can use that to create your content wherever you are, or, which is really nice. So Yeah.
And you can like
Yeah.
only get ready like once and not have to worry about constantly being camera ready because that's what holds me back sometimes is I'm like, wait a second, I need to get ready. It's going to take me 3 hours to get ready to film this 60-second reel. It's a whole thing, right?
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, like literally. So it's nice to be able to have this. I do try and keep it reasonably up to date and like, film them every now and then, but it's good having a bit of a stash of videos of yourself here. So you don't have to go back and film every time. This video I was quite proud of too. It did quite well. And I used a method that CJ taught me about storytelling in this video. So, and it performed quite nicely. So it works. It works, people.
You're doing such an amazing job on your socials, Kristy. And as we're kind of getting ready to come to the end of this live stream together, I'd love to ask you what advice would you give to aspiring brand and graphic designers who are looking to build their portfolio, find their dream clients, and charge their worth?
Oh, okay. So the tips that I would give, I think most problems that people like come to when they're thinking about growing their business or growing their own free or working on freelance is the mentally we put a block on ourselves. There's a quote and it's, "You're far too smart to be the only thing standing in your own way." And I really like this quote because for so long, even me, when I was working for other people, I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I deserved to be where I was. I put this mental block on myself. And I think if you can open that up and be okay with maybe not being the best designer in the world, but putting yourself out there, you are going to do so much better because there's so many people who aren't even on Instagram because they're too worried about what people might think, or maybe they're not posting their work because again, they're too worried about what people might think. So if you can open yourself up to the possibility, because especially when it comes to social media, it's literally like our phones are very branded, of course, are the door to opportunity. So why would you put yourself in a position where, oh, I'm worried about what people might think? What if I told you like your dreams that you'd never thought of could be possible is on the other side of this? Like you should just get out there and work on it. So that would be one tip. Another one as well is, actually these all come from quotes, which I like quotes. So my other favorite quote is, opportunity dances with those on the dance floor. This also comes back to like putting yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there to hopefully get new opportunities. And the other tip as well would essentially just be to try and learn as much as you can from other creators, other designers. There's so many amazing courses that are at such amazing like prices now, like James Martin, Made by James. He's got some incredible courses for incredibly good prices. The Future, Christo as well. Even James Barnard has a really great illustrator course. Shout out to all my friends. And yeah, just learn from others and just keep learning, and essentially growing and evolving, because that's where you're just really gonna, create beautiful things. I think, again, if you're stuck on your creativity, do a little creative challenge. Set yourself a 100-day design challenge, or maybe not that many because it was tough. I'm not going to lie. Maybe even 5-day challenge. Just create a piece of work 5 days and put it out there to the world and see what happens.
I love this. This is all like invaluable advice, honestly, Kristy. And with that, I'd also love to know, like, where do you love to find inspiration as a designer outside of socials?
Yes. So, I mean, in terms of inspiration, I would say I honestly rely on Behance. I love Behance, love Pinterest. I mean, you could consider them as socials for sure. But I also am really inspired by just general day-to-day life. And it sounds a bit vague, but I might be walking down the street and be like, oh wow, that's like a really cool vintage sign. Like, let's take a photo of it and use that in some inspiration. And also just being inspired by my team, being inspired by people around me, was all something that comes into play when it comes to creativity. I'm also really inspired by other businesses, not even in the design industry, because I think we can learn a lot from other businesses, whatever it might be. There's someone who a friend of mine who has a business called Just Jess Bougie Bakery. And if you've been following me for a long time, you would have seen her as a client of mine. She was basically one of my first clients and really helped me get off the ground because she has this amazing, I'm going to shout her out right now. But we
I
can,
love the
it's
name,
this,
by the way. Bougie Bakery. Are you kidding me? Like, we
I
need
know.
here.
Oh, you'll love this brand because she has everything you are as well, like pink, bougie bakery. Like, this is her hair. She's beautiful, like such a lovely girl. But I really took a lot of inspiration from her. She would actually have to be the person that I took inspiration from when it came to wearing my brand. You know, she started to wear pink and because of her brand. And I loved that. I was like, wow, this is such a cool way to extend your brand. I'm going to give it a go too. So, you know, there you go. Like, taking inspiration from people, you know, businesses, even like people you work with, your clients. You know, she's got an awesome brand and just learning things from her. I think it can all go such a long way.
I love that so much. And I think it's so cool that you can take this inspiration from everyday life and just find ways to, whether that be inspire you or inspire projects that you're working on, I think is so unique.
Yes, no, honestly, yeah. I mean, inspiration is literally everywhere. You've just got to like be open to it and see those little pockets of awesomeness.
I love it. And let us know, where can we stay connected with you? What's coming up for you and the Pink Pony?
Yeah, so yeah, me and Pedro, who's over there, we so at the moment, like we're just busy, you know, in client work. We've got lots of awesome projects on right now, but in the future, I'm actually attending Adobe MAX in Miami in October. I'm a luminary speaker, which is just insane. So I'm considered a headliner, which I was like
As
literally
you
mind
should.
blowing.
As you should. Look at
Yeah,
you.
so mind blowing to me. So if you are near Adobe Miami, come to Adobe Max. It's such an incredible, you know, place to just learn, connect, and just have a good time. I love going there. My session will actually be live streamed this year, so everyone will be able to watch it, which is another awesome thing. So that's coming up. I've got a few online summits coming up, so definitely look out for them because I walk through some really juicy, good material there as well. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out. But my socials are Kristy.thepinkpony is my like personal brand page. And then you can find us on TikTok and pretty much everywhere else as Pink Pony Creative. But yeah, honestly, always here to chat. Would love to just talk more about anything, any questions. I'm an open book. Sometimes I take a while to get back onto my DM, so apologies if it takes a bit, but I will try and get back to everyone. I promise.
You are the best, Kristy. Thank you so much for being so open with us and sharing your story today. It was truly such an honor having you here with us. And I mean, anybody who has questions, you know where to find Kristy. She's amazing. She will literally be your best friend. Make sure you hang tight. We've got Phil and Izzy coming up for an exciting collab battle. Can never say this right, on multilingual design. So make sure you check it out and don't go far. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye, Brittany.